Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, two men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name is Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the blockchain space help deliver you with value. And on this episode, we're joined by Wilson Wei, co-founder of CyberConnect. A graduate of UC Berkeley, Wilson discovered crypto in early 2017 and quickly got involved in the space by creating a decentralized content economy called LINO blockchain, and then launching DLive, which was the first decentralized live streaming platform. CyberConnect is a decentralized social graph protocol returning data ownership back to users and helping developers build powerful Web3 social apps. Wilson, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on. And where I want to start, we're going to get into CyberConnect and dive into all things regarding that. But first, I'm excited because I think possibly you and I discovered blockchain technology in similar fashion. So I discovered it in 2016 through the Steem blockchain and through Steemit. And so I'm curious for you as well, because I know that with DLive, that was something a lot of people on Steemit were blogging about at the time or utilizing DLive. Was Steem on your radar at all? Like, was that part of your gateway drug into crypto?
Like my first attention to blockchain was driven by Bitcoin. And then, I read the whole paper a couple of times actually. And then later on the Ethereum, and then Ethereum got me into more of the decentralized economy and how smart contracts could change our internet life. And then later on, I definitely at some point I noticed there was one platform called Steem, and they're doing amazing stuff with decentralizing content platforms, and that was pretty cool, I thought. And but for LINO blockchain, we originated the whole idea based on so many other platforms. Of course, Steem was one of the very first who came up with the decentralized content economy idea. And then LINO, we found that for a lot of content, especially when content creators are making money through some kind of like subscription model or donation model or tipping model, which could fit the whole decentralized economy better, we think. And that's why we think LINO was something that we really want to experiment with. And that was the first thing that we did back in 2017.
And skipping to a little forward to DLive, is my understanding there was a story with PewDiePie and he was going to leave YouTube and migrate to DLive, and that fell through. I'm probably not explaining this all correctly. Do you know the story there, and can you explain that?
Yeah, sure. I was the one that actually bought PewDiePie on board.
Oh, so, nice.
That was pretty interesting. I even flew to UK, Brighton. I remember I met Felix, PewDiePie, in Brighton. And then we have a long chat about decentralization and how the blockchain it's going to change creator economy, and how that's going to help like YouTubers or content creators control their data, control their channel, and not being bullied by centralized platform by saying whatever or enforcing whatever rules that they wanted. So that was a pretty cool, fun experience, and I'm so glad that PewDiePie and Felix he was just so I'll say, comparing to a lot of other influencers or more traditional influencers, he was more of the kind of more, he was, based on my impression, he was really creative about ideas. He could think a lot further than most other influencers. And that's what, DLive was building, was trying to help users and influencers to remain control over their channel, because at the end of the day, those channel, it's their livelihood. They spend years building one single channel based on one platform, and if the platform at some point does not like them, that become a huge problem with their whole business and their career. I'm so glad that he eventually loved the idea, even though like we have been talking for like 6 months, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit maybe more than 6 months. And he eventually onboarded and decided to onboard with DLive exclusively. That's amazing. And he supported so many influencers there. So that was a very fun experience.
So that's awesome. I think that's so cool. And it's great to hear about Felix being, so open and sort of creative minded to get on board with something that's obviously, pushing the boundaries of where things are at the time. How did sort of the ending of that transpire? Because obviously PewDiePie is still on YouTube today. So how did that all play out in the end? Yeah,
I'll say in general, it didn't work out the way we wanted. Not saying like PewDiePie's, partnership didn't work out. It worked out pretty well. It was the whole business. We kind of expanded like too fast. And back then in 2019, it was still the one of the darkest days. I'll say, and therefore the infrastructure costs of the CDN and everything transcoding was exploding. And we kind of have just to find a way to survive the cost, to cover the cost. And, we make some mistakes as a team. I wouldn't, I'll say like, those are the big lessons that we learn. Mm-hmm. It could be a very different story if we survived it for another like 8 months or so. Instead, like, we got acquired, not based on our willing, definitely, but based on, the cash burn rate that we were having back then. And that was the largest pressure. We didn't want to let everyone down. We want to maintain the platform to keep it going. And that's why, eventually we got acquired. And then, things changed quite a bit after acquisition, which happens to a lot of the companies that have been acquired. I don't want to get too deep into that, but we try our best, and we make mistakes and we learn, and here we are with CyberConnect. So I think I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all the community members who supported us, and also the experiences that we learned from that journey.
Recently, we've started to jump into a couple conversations on previous episodes. We had Prerna Gupta on the podcast earlier in the month, and she was talking about Web3 social media, and we got into a pretty deep conversation about that. And you think about whether it's Steam or whether it's DLive or all of these different platforms attempting, and to me it makes a lot of sense, because that was one of the reasons I think a lot of people on the platform, Steam it specifically in the early days, thought that this is going to be a gateway drug for a lot of people into crypto or into blockchain in general, just because it's easy to understand that type of thing. And then, of course, in 2021, NFTs ended up being this massive onboarding tool. But in terms of Web3 social media, how close do you think we are to kind of mass adoption? Because there's different platforms out there, but they are still quite niche. So how far away do you think we are until we kind of see the majority of people interacting with social media on Web3?
You know, it really depends on how we define like social media platforms on Web3. If we're talking about like social media platforms that adopts NFTs and some level of wallet connection, I mean, that could be really fast. You know, Twitter is already doing it, and Instagram the same. So centralized platforms, they're trying to, you know, capture this new technology. But if we're talking more of like the crypto native kind of platforms, which means that supposedly they should build on top of a decentralized infrastructure and make sure the ownership of data, the ownership of channels belongs to its users, then I think it might take another like 5 years, to be honest, to get widely adopted. The challenges mostly are based on the, you know, currently I think the biggest challenge is still the infrastructure instead of, you know, platforms like experience or something. All of the unuser-friendly experiences are mostly due to the lack of infrastructure or the immaturity of our current infrastructure. You know, by, for example, like creating a wallet, it's a bit of a headache for normal users who have never used crypto before. Like creating a MetaMask, it's a headache. And then you have to manage your key. And even after you go through all of that, which could possibly, you know, be widely adopted, because like that's you know, it could, like, we could argue that it's easier than setting up your bank account, right? You talk to nobody, and you know, it's easier compared to that. But you know, the transaction, the gas fee, the TPS we have right now, just not enough yet. You can make a very simple comparison to Facebook or any widely adopted social media platforms. They are doing like 10x or 50 or 100x, maybe, you know, 500x plus more TPS right now compared to what we have with our infrastructure, and that, I think, it's the biggest problem. And they're doing it for free, and we're trying to charge everyone some kind of a gas fee per transaction. So I think it's more of the infrastructure problem, but I can see it improve over time, especially when, you know, Ethereum 2.0 is coming up. A lot of the roll-ups are going to be really amazing in terms of solving the problem of scaling and lowering down the cost to basically not even like, you know, if it's lower enough to a point that developers could easily cover those fees by themselves and give users a very, you know, free experience. I think that would be the time when a large amount of, like, let's say, billions of people can start using those platforms. But but again, just want to add on to that. Although it doesn't sound like that optimistic, but I think the optimistic part is we already have a pretty good amount of Web3 native users, which could enable some Web3 native social media platforms or in general social platforms to thrive within our community right now. And I think that's the way to go, like capture this group of user first, and then develop your products into a much more mature product, and then gradually get into the Web2 space and compete against those tech giants. So I think it's that's how I see the industry going.
follow up to that question. So it's one thing to say, when will native Web3 social media platforms sort of become adopted? But it's another to say, well, when will they ever overtake the giants that exist today in Twitter, in YouTube, in Facebook, and whatever other sort of social platform? So do you think that is the inevitable future, or do you think that's an uphill battle that maybe won't ever truly happen?
I think if we're talking about like replacing those platforms, then I'll probably go to the latter one. It's going to be a very brutal battle. But you know, my point of view here is, I don't think like Web3 native platforms are trying to take over what, you know, what, like, for example, like what Twitter is doing right now. Like, I think Twitter serve, you know, their users with a very specific demand. It's like, you know, sending out those tweets under some level of censorship. There is going to be demand for this kind of products. And plus, Twitter, it's going to gradually adopt Web3, just like what they're doing right now. So I think like the Web3 native products are going to have a very different angle than we could expect. I don't think it's going to be like a Twitter alternative. You know, I see it more as like a new kind of media platforms that users have never seen before. That's how I view it. So I wouldn't say it's a direct competition kind of thing. Right. And gradually, if people, the demand of users leading towards more of like decentralization, censorship-free, or more financial transaction, I think that's when, you know, users will tend to use other services instead of sticking with Twitter. But currently, I think Twitter is you know, it's pretty strong.
We've talked about CyberConnect in bits and pieces here. You know, Wade mentioned it in the intro. It's been brought up a couple times so far in the conversation. Obviously, we want to get into that in more detail. So to start things off on that subject matter, can you just do a deeper dive and explain to us what a decentralized social graph protocol means, and a little more around CyberConnect as a whole?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, like CyberConnect, it's building a decentralized social graph protocol that enables developers to solve the network problem, the network effect problem and the co-starting problem, and for users to claim back their rights on their important data, in which we think those are actually your social capital and to some extent like your asset. Let me start with users. Like, what does it mean to have a decentralized social graph? For example, like for ordinary users like me, I say it's you could think of it as like, let me give you like one very simple use case. When you use your Steam accounts to log into like CSGO and so many other games, you know, you got to play with the same group of friends, and that's because you're using this like one account system that's provided by the Steam platform, and all the other games are, you know, established there. They publish their game there, so there is a one unified account system connecting all those games. And what's happening within our space right now is like we can see this whole trend of using wallet connects and this like address wallet based account system dominating all that web login. And that's so powerful because this account system, it's a universal account system that can carry users' assets and cryptocurrency and NFTs into multiple platforms and utilize them into different use cases. And therefore, we have more interoperability. And for the assets that we own, it enables composabilities. Like, for example, your NFT within this use case could be, let's say, an equipment. And within the next use case, it could be something else, right? And that's super cool. And that's when, the amazing thing about being composable is, and that's for all the crypto native assets part. And how we see it in social, it's this account system right now is lack of the aspect of enabling users to have social engagement. For example, adding friends, creating following and follower relationship. And those data is so important to users because, for example, like if those data are standardized, just like how for example, like the ERC20 standard, prior to ERC20 standard, we have so many different kind of like token building on top of Ethereum, but never standardized into one thing. And therefore there's no interoperability and there's no composability. And when we have one standard, it becomes much more powerful. So in the case of an ordinary user, that means you could have your gaming social graph within your wallet or somehow connected to your wallet, stored decentralizedly, either on chain or on Arweave or on IPFS, but it's standardized, and all the other game developers could adopt the same thing. And therefore, when you log into different games, you will be able to still play with the same group of friends in so many different games, even when they're not using the same Steam publishing platform. That's what decentralized means in this case. And it could be even more powerful to, for example, influencers. Like, for example, if an influencer spent like 5 years building a YouTube or TikTok channel with, like, let's say 1 million followers, which is a lot, and that's a livelihood. That's their, that 1 million follower count. It's the core asset of this influencer. And with CyberConnect, we enable this user to own those assets decentralizedly, and making sure that those relationship data is portable to so many other platforms. And therefore, when you don't have to recreate your audience on multiple different platforms. And so many times, the platforms could be very similar, like video platforms, short video platforms, and blog posting platform. Like, your audience could be migrated into those platforms easily, and that's what we also call it, the mobility of your social capital, which never exists before. And ultimately, like, what it gives to users or influencers specifically are two things. Like, one, it's your mobility of your social capital. You could easily create other audience on other platforms. Second, it's your bargaining power against the current platform that you're using. By owning your data, change the whole game. You eventually, those influencers could sit down on the table and bargain against the platform. If you don't like me, if you do those things, without my consent, I'm gonna just walk out the door and use another product because I still have those follower base. I own my channel instead of you owning my everything. So that's I think that's going to change the whole game. And for developers, let me give you like a very quick example of, you remember like how application like on the mobile are trying to request access to your local contact book, your address book, right? To bootstrap their initial network. And initially, like a couple of years ago, Facebook once allows third-party developers to query Facebook users' friend list based on users' consent. And those are the examples of how social graph data could enable apps to solve the code starting problem by having an initial pool of social graph data, and therefore giving users a very like customized user experience. And that's a very clear and a simple example. And currently, like we already have more than 30 plus developers integrating with CyberConnect, where they accumulated more than 21 million connections between 1.4 million, almost like 1.5 million unique addresses, users. And so I think that's a very quick overview of CyberConnect. Yeah.
Ulf, do you realize our audience has been either watching or listening to this episode for 20 minutes?
20 minutes? No, they should probably subscribe.
Yeah, they should subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment and turn on notifications. And if you're listening to this podcast, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review.
We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. So go check out the episode description. You can find all that information below. And we have an update on the NFT, don't we?
That's right. We didn't previously mention this, but this NFT for OG supporter is a one of one. There will only be one of this kind ever minted, and we have a few surprises for the person who purchases it. The link is in the episode description.
And back to the episode. Awesome. Thanks for the explanation, Wilson. I think that's great, especially the examples you provided. That makes it really easy to understand. One thing I want to follow up with, though, is in your examples, they were primarily focused on the benefits to the content creator or the developer. So when we get back to the user, while there are still going to be some clear benefits, there could be drawbacks as well. So what about when it comes to, say, trust or privacy? And what I mean by that is, so great, I've got my wallet, and the nice thing about a wallet being in this whole ecosystem that is transferable, where I can now apps can access, I access these apps through my wallet, and all of my, let's say the people I subscribe to as a user, I'm now connected to them through that app automatically because my wallet's recognized. Is that at all, like, what if I don't want that? What if I don't want to follow that same creator I follow on this app? I only want to follow them on the original app. Does that then pose challenges for the user where now they're always following all of these subscribers and they have maybe less control than they would have liked with the way things currently are, which is starting fresh on every platform kind of thing? So that's the one, but I just want to get the other one out as well as a follow-up, which is to do with privacy. And well, what does this put the onus on the user to be all that more strategic with how they manage their wallets? Because if they have a wallet where they do all of their transactions and they've got lots of financials in there, and then that's the same one they use to go game or follow on social media, does that then expose them in certain ways?
Okay. Yeah, those are very good questions. Let me answer the second one first. First of all, I think users are gonna get used to having multiple addresses, to be honest. Just like how, I guess we all have different bank accounts. I think people should eventually evolve into a behavior where we kind of have this like address for my social account instead of for my trading. Trading, like especially when we're talking about like, cryptocurrency trading, like high frequency trading, or at least like daily trading. Like those are very sensitive things. I think a smart trader will never leave any trace. They even switch IP. They use VPN. They use a lot of things to try to stay anonymous, and I think that's totally okay. And therefore, you could easily create one account that you will use to play with all the social platforms or play with games within the space, and create your identity there, and not harming your trading activities at all. I think that's totally possible. And that's also probably one of the easiest ways to go with. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Basically, you're agreeing that people will need to be strategic maybe with how they use their wallets, and perhaps in the future that won't be something that's such a manual process. Maybe that's part of we've talked a lot before about sort of the user experience in Web3 right now, and maybe down the road it's like just common or even instructed of users when they're getting onboarded into Web3 to set up different wallets for different things, and maybe that'll be an easier thing for people to sort of wrap their head around.
Yeah, maybe that's possible actually. Like for example, like how we see Stefan is doing, they directly create a new wallet for users. That's their way to go. But another thing is like all of us, we all have different kind of identities online, and even in real life, like we play different roles, and that's super normal. So I think it really makes sense for users who want to play different roles to have different identities and therefore different wallets. So I don't think that's a huge concern. But the positive side of having a wallet attached to your identity is that a lot of the credentials or things that you want to present to your audience become trustworthy. For example, if you're trying to apply for a job, how do I know your linking is real? How do I know you're not lying on your resume? If you show me your address-based profile with a whole bunch of verifiable credentials and identity, which that's why we're building Link3. The whole process become much more transparent and much easier, and therefore more productive in some way. I think it's definitely like more like a plus than a minor thing. Yeah.
I want to circle back to Link3, what you just mentioned there in a second. But first off, going back to that first part of Ulf's question about could there be any downside for users of social media, or in that sense of, in the current system, they kind of have the choice of whether they follow different accounts. Whereas if this way of, because their wallet signifies that they belong to it, then all of a sudden they're following the same person across multiple accounts. Do you see any downside there?
Yeah, I think, first of all, like access control would be possible. So it's not like you're forced to follow the same person over platforms like again and again. Like even though like right now the access control system on CyberConnect, it's not fully developed yet, but it's technically possible. So we're going to build it at some point. It's like the reason why we're not prioritizing that, it's just because there are not much useful platforms out there yet. So it's not the most important problem to solve. But yeah, so with access control, it's definitely solvable. And for privacy, we're actively looking into different privacy solutions as well. And we think of privacy as, from two different like perspectives. Like one is there are a kind of social graph that it's not sensitive. Like for example, most of the Twitter social graph data are not as sensitive, but in some cases, like for example, your Telegram social graph, your Telegram contact list, your Messenger, your WhatsApp contact list, those could be very sensitive. And therefore, we're currently prioritizing the protocol with those platforms with less privacy concern, and with the platforms like all the DMs, like IM apps, we'll probably wait until we have a fully developed, sensitive, like privacy preserved version of CyberConnect. That's the strategy.
Makes sense. And in terms of, so there was some research that Salesforce did. They did a report which was called the State of the Connected Customer. And one of the stats was that 27% of consumers completely understand how companies use their personal data. So obviously the minority kind of understand it. So other than conversations like this, what is your strategy, or what is CyberConnect's strategy in terms of educating people that they should like care about their personal data, and especially from the influencer standpoint?
I think right now the biggest challenge is actually not to persuade those people. It's to see good use cases. I think the best way to send out a message is by providing a good product with good use cases. And that's how you make a good story and convince influencer to get on board.
So in regards to people owning their personal data, their social data, and how that will work with CyberConnect, maybe not necessarily right now, but like sort of the vision for the future, what does that really mean? It's one thing to say, oh, you own your personal data, but what does that mean for the user? Does that mean that they'll be able to, at some sort of, kind of like we were talking about, some sort of access level, they'll be able to control different aspects of their information and what doesn't get shared at a configurable level? Or am I understanding that wrong? Can you maybe explain that in more detail?
Yeah, what you just explained, like a different level of access control and being able to configure it into those details. I think that's the longer vision. Like that's probably where CyberConnect would like to go into, and that needs to have. I think the main blocker here, it's a decentralized and encrypted database that's also verifiable. And that's what's missing right now. And also, like, it needs to be able to scale. Like, a lot of the ZK solution right now, it's the major problem is scaling. But definitely, like what you said, it's gonna be the long-term vision of what we're building, to grant those control over data carefully. But I'll say at the beginning stage, it's more about the interoperability, because like when a user does not have a whole bunch of data, like Web3 data, we start from nothing to now, like maybe a couple dozen per user. If we're talking about like on-chain transactions, to a point where we have like millions and millions of engagement per user, which is the Web2 right now. It's still a huge gap. And when we don't have much data to manage with, I think the major problem is to focus on interoperability first. And then later on, detail management, access control, and privacy, those will come a little bit later. But definitely that's a vision.
You referenced Link3 earlier, and on another interview, I heard you describe it as a Web3 passport. Can you kind of just dive a little bit deeper into what Link3 is and why it's important?
Yeah, so we once had an idea to maybe call it like Web3 passport, and then later on, like some other projects start calling their things like passport. So we kind of like abandoned that name. But so first of all, like Link3, it's a social, like Web3 social network for verifiable identities. That's like in one very concise sentence. You might notice that like the key here is verifiable identities. First of all, let me talk about like why we think that's important. Right now, all the users on Web3 are represented by their wallet, and to the best level, it's like by their ENS human readable like domain. That's the best user level experience level that we can get to. We think in order for social networks to thrive within this space, we really need this identity to build on top of all the addresses. We can't just tag users based on address, based on the transactions and stuff, and then expect people to use those things to create a Facebook account. And if that's the case, it's not a Facebook, it's not an Instagram. It's like you ever play the Monopoly game? It's like the rank of all the top richest people. That it's what it's gonna come like that becomes. And I think in order for us to build like fun and meaningful social networks on top of our current like address wallet based account system, like we need this identity layer. We like really quick to identify users from a very social aspect instead of a very financial aspect. That's absolutely what we're missing right now. We have basically zero knowledge about one user's social identity or what it means to tag it as one user. So I think I'm so glad to see like, especially like currently, so many discussions have been around like SBT, verifiable credentials. Fundamentally what they're talking about is identity. It's how we identify one user with those like social aspect instead of financial aspect. And Link3 is trying to be the front page of all of users' social verifiable identity. Your all the stuff that you could provide to prove that you are this type of like person instead of that. Comparing to like Web2, the key difference here is verifiable. Like on Web2, it's cool that you have your LinkedIn, it's cool that you have your Twitter profile, but you'll never be able to prove all the things that you mentioned on there. It's an information platform for presentation only. There's no trust there. And trust is so important because it slows down all the frictions of communication. And also that's also one of the key important parts that I think will empower the Web3 native social platforms in the future. Like being able to identify like who is who are the real users, who are the bots. That would be the most basic version, the most basic feature. I think that's Link3. And so in July, we launched a personal version of Link3. And then we previously launched the organization version in June. And we already have almost 200 plus profiles for organization that's verified by Link3 so that people can trust those information, those different links, the community links, the official website and everything on those links. And for personal, we're getting pretty good tractions. A lot of the top professional active community members are joining the platform and leveraging their profile link on Twitter. The same as organization, almost like half of the organization, verified organizations using, are using their Link3 doc2/ blah, blah, blah. Like for example, the OpenDAO or GAL, Project Galaxy on their Twitter right now. And that's pretty cool. So that's the initial version of Link3. And then we're going to support more and more features. And of course, more verifiable data for users. And how we see Link3 in the future would be like we imagining like by minting this Link3 profile NFT and using this platform to display all those like trustworthy information, users could potentially use this profile to apply for different things like helping users to get into whitelist, getting into like priority queue, getting into a part of a community to prove that you are not a bot. Because right now I know a lot of the perks, airdrops are given to bots instead of real human being, and that's actually a shame, I think. I hope that Link3 could build this trustworthy network for all the crypto native people, and eventually become a place where you could search for projects and search for people and connect with them, knowing that this is trustworthy, and potentially even like sending them a DM or receiving DMs without spamming. That's the potential of Link3. And it's built on top of CyberConnect, so it's pretty interoperable.
We've talked about when social media platforms in like Web3 social media, where that will go. Is Link3 essentially a Web3 social media platform, or is that where that's going?
That's a very good question that we constantly, debating internally. First of all, like social network, it's different than social media platforms. Like social media platforms basically mean that you have to enable users to publish content on a regular basis, and people use this platform to subscribe to content or follow content. But Link3 for now, at least for the short period of time, it's going to be focusing on building identities, starting as a very good tool for users and organizations to build up a trustworthy profile. But whether we'll get into the social media parts, I don't have a clear answer at the moment. If you guys really want it, just maybe send us a message or leave some comments on Twitter. We'll hear you, and we'll seriously consider that in the future. Yeah.
All right. And to piggyback onto Link3, how you mentioned, if Link3 is about identities and verifiable information related to profiles, I think that ties into POAPs. POAPs are something we've discussed a few times now, where right now, the way POAPs work is users are provided with them for their proof of attendance and something, whether they own something or they were at something or whatever it may be. How do POAPs play into this? Do they play into it at all? And what is the importance of POAPs in your eyes?
Currently, Link3 already support users to display all the POAP badges that they collect, because we do believe a lot of the POAP badges are verifiable and trustworthy. But in terms of like how we'll further integrate with POAP, that's we might need some discussion on that. Like currently how we see how we see could be most beneficial to users would be to aggregate those information into one single profile. That's it. Instead of having those POAP badges or some other verifiable credentials issued by other projects spread out all over the places with different kind of senders, and therefore it really cannot become a unified profile. So that's how I see it for now. And the importance of POAP, I mean, it's obviously like currently the most widely adopted badges system or proof of attendance kind of system we have within the space. But I think it could play a much more important role when it taps into more of a, like, instead of just doing like proof of attendance, proof of identity, issuing like SVT, issuing things that could be more composable, supporting different chains, and maybe even have like a different tier of badges. Right now, like, it's super easy for people to randomly drop a profile and also to claim it, which kind of, making the profile less worth it to some extent. So I think, those are my like quick thoughts on POAP for now. But it's super cool. Co-founder of POAP, it's also one of our angel, amazing. So we love POAP. Yeah.
Awesome. Wilson, this has been such a great conversation. We're getting toward the end, and we ask every guest the same 3 questions. So we'll get to those in a second. But before that, one of the common things we've been asking guests this year is for their bear market advice. So I want you to kind of imagine, well, for yourself, you got into the space in 2017. So not too long after that, you experienced a crypto winter, and you lived through that, and you've stuck around and built during that time. So for somebody listening to this episode or watching it on YouTube, who perhaps this is their first bear market, what's your advice to help get them through it?
So for entrepreneurs, first of all, because us entrepreneurs, we've been through the cycle before, and we make mistakes. And my lesson here is like, number one is like, watch super closely on your burn. No matter how fast you're growing, like our lesson was we were growing like way too fast. Like, we shouldn't be doing that again. Especially when growing directly means to, increase the cost of your infrastructure dramatically. That should be a very careful thing to do. Like, if you're planning to expand your cost, you'll need to almost instantly prep for another raise to make sure that you have enough runway for another like 24 months or so. So that's number one. Maybe for entrepreneurs, another thing is like, keep close to the, reputable investors that backs you. Those investors, they would have more time to spend on your project since it's a bear market. And I do believe that the investors who support projects, especially during the bear market, are going to be the top investors in the next bull market upcoming. So leverage your resource, and don't just do only like quarterly review or something. If you feel like you need it, do monthly. Talk to investors, get their feedback. Make sure you're not making a huge mistake that you can never revise. Many things else, but let me get a little bit to individual players in this playground. In the bear market, number one is very similar. Watch your wallet. Be very careful of your investment. I'll say be more selective, especially in the bear market, but still stay on the table. That's like my if there's only one thing that I want to emphasize, it's like stay on the table. If you ever walk out of the room and leave the table, that means you're never gonna come back. And you miss this whole great alpha, amazing industry. And stay here, do your research, try to contribute to the project that you like. And by contributing to the project that you like, first of all, you're going to learn so much more than ordinary players. And second, you'll get recognized. You're going to be able to establish your again, your identity or your status within the space. And that's important. And that's what helped you grow faster than everybody else when the bull market come. So yeah, I think those are the advice that I can share based on my very personal experience.
Yeah, I love that advice. And we've heard some interesting answers from guests, but I love how you broke it out for not only individuals but for entrepreneurs specifically. A ton of really good tips there. And so, as I mentioned, Wilson, we ask every guest the same 3 questions in a segment we call You Had Me at Crypto. So Alf's going to ask you those questions.
All right, okay. You ready?
Let's go.
The first question, who's your favorite person to follow in the crypto space?
Oh. I'll say maybe Kyle from Multicoin Capital.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. All right. Second question. What will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now?
That's a hard one.
Of course it's a hard one.
We're asking you to predict the future and use a crystal ball here. So
10 years, 10x.
10x?
Yeah. I'll say 10 years, 10x.
Okay.
All right. Wait, so what would that put us at as of right now?
210-ish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 210-ish. That sounded a lot bigger when you said 10x, but now that we're getting the number conversion, we've had a lot bigger guesses. So fair. I like that though. That's reasonable.
When with 10 years, 10x, that means your yearly compounded IRR should be around like 25%, which is, much better than all the other macro stuff that you could invest in.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's a good,
pretty reasonable investment. Yeah.
Fair enough.
All right. Third question here. What is the most underrated coin or project in all of crypto? And we can't say CyberConnect.
Oh, okay. Let me say Project Galaxy, GAL.
All right.
Yeah.
All GAL. Right.
Perfect. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much, Wilson. We really enjoyed this conversation. Very informative. We appreciate you joining us on this episode of Show Me the Crypto.
Thank you guys for having me again.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe as well as rate and review this podcast.